You don't have to be a US president to deliver one of the most famous speeches in history. Ich bin ein Berliner. I'm not a crook. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. Are all influential speeches by US presidents. But speeches such as I have a dream, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee, and we call it the iPhone, are all equally influential speeches delivered by non-presidents. That being said, we're going to study the speaking techniques of US presidents to learn how we can make our speeches sound presidential without being the actual US president. I recently completed an analysis series of every single first US presidential inaugural speech, starting from FDR in 1933 all the way to Trump in 2025. And what I looked at through these speeches was how each president brought their own particular personality and their own particular style to the speech, but also what were the commonalities that most, if not all of them, fell back on. What were the key core principles that made every single inauguration speech stand out? I've highlighted 5 of these principles, and if these 5 principles are good enough for the President of the United States, they're good enough for us as well to bring into our speeches and think about how we can be more impactful and more influential, not just on the day we deliver our speech, not just on day one like the US president, but how do those words and how does your speech set the tone for where the future of your audience is going? The first principle is old world, new world. Every US president at some point highlighted, here's the way things used to be, here's the way things are going to be in the future. And what you're doing with old world, new world is you are highlighting, okay, here's some of the traditions, here's some of the culture, here's some of the core parts of identity that we celebrate and welcome from the old world. But let's look at how we continue to grow and improve that going forward. This is a key statement that you want to make in your speeches as well. You want your audience to identify with what is already good. What is a core part of who they are? So let's say you're talking to mompreneurs, for example. Well, what you're maybe going to highlight is you're going to highlight some of those traditional values of being a caring mother, of looking after the house, all those kind of things. But then you're going to paint this new world where the identity of a mother is not just the mothering and it's not just what they're doing around the house. Well, the identity of a mother now is, well, now you can be a key part of the workforce. Now you can be someone who is a leader outside of the household. You can be the primary breadwinner in the household when traditionally that has been the man's role. So you can see how you can combine, okay, here's the good stuff from the old world, but let's look at how this new world can be different. Let's look at how this new world can be better. That's something that all US presidents have highlighted in their speeches. They've drawn upon the history and culture of the United States, what it means to be American, and then going, okay, in our young country, and this is something that most US presidents cover, is in our young country, we are still learning and growing and progressing. What is the direction and path in which we're going to do that? How do you build that foundation for your audience as well? Highlighting what's good about their old world and getting them excited about the new world. Next up for number 2, we have detail the struggle, paint the solution. And this builds upon that old world, new world narrative, but this time it's looking at more of the past and present in terms of what is wrong with the past and present, what don't we like? And this is where you want to get really specific. So instead of saying things kind of suck at the moment, you go, hey look, people are struggling to get a job, it's really difficult to get a home, healthcare is too expensive. You want to really highlight and paint these details for the audience. Show that you understand and relate to their struggles. If you don't show that you understand and relate to their struggles, they aren't going to believe that you know how to get them out of those struggles. You've got to demonstrate that you see where they are at the beginning of the journey. And once they understand, okay, hey, this person knows where I am here, once you start to paint the solution, they'll believe that you can take them on that journey. And when we're talking about painting the solution, this is a little bit more big picture stuff. you have this overall destination that you're going to. So for example, if it's going to be, it's really difficult to get a job right now, you're going to say, look, in the future, we're going to make it easier to get a job. We're going to offer more training, more education. We're going to open up more industries and sectors. This is a little bit bigger picture. You're not saying we are going to create 2,752 new apprenticeships, because people don't see that detail. When you're painting a vision, it's got to be a little bit more big picture. Yes, it's got to be visual and it's got to be clear, but you're not going to have that same micro focus, because even you don't know exactly what the future is looking like. And even if you do detail exactly what the future is looking like, well, the audience aren't necessarily going to connect with that. They're going to go, well, what does 2,373 new apprenticeships, what does that mean for me? Am I going to get one? So when you have that amount of micro detail, the audience can actually get a little bit lost in it. So you want to be detailed on their challenges, on their struggles, and then paint a picture of the solution. But that solution is a little bit more big picture. What you're trying to do with that solution is you're then trying to inspire hope, you're inspiring optimism, you're inspiring aspiration, you're inspiring ambition. And there is a time later for the more details, for the more implementation. When the US president is delivering their inauguration speech, they haven't even sat down in the Oval Office at that point. They aren't starting to sketch out what those details look like, so they aren't going to share them in that moment. Well, actually, the same is true for you in your speeches. If you're doing a keynote, a video on YouTube, you're doing some kind of introductory webinar, you aren't going to be painting out all of those fine details of how you create that solution, but you paint the big vision of it. You get people to buy into the vision, and then from that point you can start to break down into those finer details. But that's not necessarily something you want to be doing on that first speech and that first encounter with your audience. That comes later with your training, with your workshops, with your coaching, whatever it is you might be doing. That's where you get into the details of how you fix those solutions. Just like a US president, they have to go through their day-to-day executive orders, passing bills through Congress and the Senate. That's where they start to put those details on those solutions. You'll put those details on those solutions at some point, but it's just a bigger picture solution for now. Detail the challenges, paint the solution. The third technique that US presidents use is imagery. This is such a key skill in speaking. When you're outlining things in your speech, you want to be putting images into the audience's mind, because our mind thinks in pictures, we think visually. So anytime you're describing something that's conceptual, that's abstract, that's academic, that's technical, you want the audience to be able to see what you're speaking about in the mind, rather than it just being these vague words and notions. For example, when US presidents are talking about some of the military hardships in the past, they'll talk about things like the fields of Gettysburg, the beaches of Omaha, the forests in Vietnam. They will highlight images that people can see to buy into it. Or if they're talking about some of the struggles, not just the struggle to get a job, it would be the shutters on businesses closing down. It would be the queues outside the job center. It's things that you can see in your mind a lot more. And of course, it's not just those negative aspects, it's the positive aspects. It's talking about putting footsteps on the moon, about reaching for the stars. The more you can make your speeches visual, the more that your audience will start to see the vision of what you're talking about. They'll start to see how they fit in to that vision. Those images help them to understand, ingrain, and implement the lessons that you're teaching to a much higher degree. Whenever you can, think about how do you bring this part of the speech to life with images. Using these imagery techniques, your metaphors, your similes, vivid descriptions of what you're talking about, that helps bring your speech to life. And even if you're presenting something that's dusty, dry, academic, technical, political, if you can bring images into that, you start to make the speech feel more like a movie than reading out of a dusty old textbook. Some of those famous inauguration speeches of history are known by one catchy slogan. We call this a sticky slogan. A sticky slogan is something... Let's try that again. Next up for tip number 4, we're looking at sticky slogans. Often, these famous inauguration speeches of history are known by this one sticky slogan that came up in the speech. Think of, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. Yes, we can. Make America great again. These are all slogans where a small number of words capture broader ideas and themes. All great speeches have a theme and a message going through them. And basically what you're doing throughout that entire speech is you are building an argument for that message. You're reinforcing that theme. All of the different stories that you tell, the metaphors that you use, data and statistics that you might bring in, and these clever uses of language are all ways of hammering home what's that takeaway message? What's the one thing that I want the audience to take away from this speech? And if you can capture that one thing in a sticky slogan, make it easy to remember and easy to understand, that's giving you a chance of taking that message away. What's a sticky slogan that you can put in your speech? Something that's going to help summarize and capture the whole intent and purpose of your speech. The great speeches in history, not just these great US presidential speeches, but the great speeches in general, have often been able to encapsulate all of what they're saying in this one key phrase or slogan. What's a slogan that helps you to capture everything you want to talk about in your speeches? I've got one more key presidential principle to share with you. Before I do, we've covered a couple of key principles in this video. But if you'd like to learn more of the principles of creating engaging speeches that leave an impact on your audience, then my online course, Amplify, Spark Your Speeches, can help you. This is a 12-month online course. This was a live series of workshops that I ran with clients. And what I've done is I've taken all the recordings from these workshops and I've put them into a course view. So these are pre-recorded, you study at your own time and your own pace, and this takes you on a journey through the different core fundamentals of speaking, learning how you apply all of these different skills. You've got different challenges, different practical activities that are going to help you to bring these skills to life in your speech. To be a part of this program, you can either enroll for an upfront payment of $297, or you can pay 12 monthly installments of $29. Whatever payment method you choose, you go through the 12-month program. When you finish the 12-month program, it's yours for life. You have lifetime access. What I'd like to do is give you an opportunity to try out the course, see if it's going to be helpful for you and your speaking going forward, is offer you that first month for a $1 trial. So you can come into the course, experience the first month of workshops, see the different bonus features that we have in there as well, how we structure the practical activities and challenges, how we build on your learning experience. And if that's something that you feel is going to be helpful for you and your speaking going forward, fantastic. You can stay in the program, you pay the remaining 11 monthly installments, and then after that, you've got the course for life. If you decide, I don't think this is quite what I'm looking for, that's fine. You cancel the trial. You've still got that first month of content for $1. So you've still learned something from the process, even if it's not necessarily going to suit you going forward. To activate your $1 trial, I've put a link to the Amplify course in the video description below. If you click that link, they'll take you through to a lot more information about the course. There'll be a video of me outlining blow by blow what's covered in the program. You'll see some of the testimonials from the people that we've been able to help in the course. To activate your trial, you'll see the membership options are on the screen in a drop-down box. Make sure you select the monthly option, click the blue button that says purchase, and at checkout, use the code YouTube. That's where you've come from. You've seen this video on YouTube. Use the code YouTube, all lowercase, all one word. That takes that first month's installment from $29 down to $1. You'll then have instant access to the course. You'll get your 1 month trial, and then they'll help you make a decision about whether you want the rest of the course after that. Now let's look at the final principle of how to speak like a US president. The fifth and final principle of speaking like a US president is to make conviction statements. When people are looking up to a leader, they want the leader to sound like they know what they're doing. They want to go, this is someone who is going to help me. Not someone who could help me, not someone who might help me, someone who will help me. Now, the first distinction to make here is you don't make false promises. You don't say, well, I can do this and I can solve this. It's going to be easy. It's going to be simple. The best presidents and the best leaders have said, look, we understand what the challenges are at the moment. We understand it's a difficult path to go forward. But when we look at our old world principles, when we look at the aspiration, the resilience that we have as a people, when we look at, well, this is how we can solve things, this is the direction that we're going in. If we paint this vision of what this journey looks like, this is how we can get to a brighter future. This is how we're going to do it. These are the steps that we're going to take. So presidents, they don't shirk away from it being a challenging and difficult path, but they also have that conviction that if we push through that challenge, if we push through that struggle, we're going to get to that aspirational vision. That's something that US presidents are very clear on. They have conviction in what they say. They don't sound like they don't believe what they're talking about. So some of this comes down to the words choice. It's using those stronger words like will, can, must, staying away from those floatier, wishy-washy words. It's about the tone that you take. You don't want to have a rising inflection at the end of things are going to improve. Is that a question? Things are going to improve? Question mark. It's things are going to improve. You have that drop down tone on those conviction statements. It's the gestures and the energy that they bring into it. America is a great country compared to America is a great country and if we work together there's nothing we can't do. You see the difference, right? Great leaders have conviction in what they're saying. Not false promise convictions, not rah-rah motivational hype, but they have strength in what they're saying. And it's strength that is tempered through this idea of challenge and struggle. You actually need to highlight the challenge and struggle in order to be able to show the strength and courage. Strength and courage don't come in easy times. Strength and courage come in difficult times. So that's why you've got to paint the old world, new world. That's why you've got to detail the challenges and the solutions. You've got to draw upon those difficulties in order to get that point of conviction. And that's when your audience will buy into you. That's when they'll believe in you. That's when they'll trust you. That's when they'll follow you. How can you speak like a US president? These are some key principles and foundations to think about as you build your speeches going forward. And hey, look, 2029 is on its way. If you want to start thinking about a late bid for president, let's start putting those skills into place. Someone's got to win it in 2029, don't they? Why can't it be you? And if it's not US president that you're aspiring for, that isn't the only way to have an impactful, aspirational speech. Some of the greatest speeches in history have come from non-US presidents. And one of those speeches can be yours. If you draw upon the majesty and the legacy and the conviction and the boldness of some of these great US presidential speeches, you can be someone who sounds presidential in your speeches without ever having to sit in the Oval Office.